Dr. Wolchok, thank you for agreeing to talk with me, and congratulations on your new job.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for making the time to speak with me.
Well, Jedd, I guess there's no other way to ask this, but why did Jedd Wolchok cross the road?
Right. So, of course, the cheeky answer is to get to the other side, but there's much more to it than that. I had the great privilege of working for 26 years at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and really could not be more grateful for the time and opportunities that I had there to really see a wholesale change in the way that immunotherapy is perceived, and to really be supported by amazing colleagues. I guess about a year or two ago, I began to get several offers from, prestigious institutions to think about what the next steps in my career might look like, specifically around leading a cancer center. After having gone through some leadership development training, I really believed that this was something that was of great interest to me. The opportunity, literally next door at Weill Cornell Medicine, was very attractive for a lot of reasons. I mean, of course, I knew the organization pretty well, having been a member of the faculty through the MSK affiliation for many years, but also not having to leave New York for some family reasons. I think we all realize that as we get older, our parents and older relatives become a bit more dependent upon us. And so the thought of, moving far away sort of limited, the opportunities that I would think about. But this one, being 15 feet away, at a stellar medical organization, really jumped out as an opportunity. I think that when I really became hooked on the idea of pursuing this was after some discussions with the leadership of both Weill Cornell Medicine, at the time Dean Augustine Choi, and the leadership of New York Presbyterian, Steve Corwin, hearing more about what their vision was for the future of cancer care at Weill Cornell, and hearing really that the future of the cancer center was, of course, anchored in the Upper East Side campus for Weill Cornell and New York Hospital, but importantly now was being focused not only on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, but also on the densely populated and diverse parts of New York City, specifically Brooklyn and Queens. There were major movements going on to align the Weill Cornell system with Brooklyn and Queens, and now Brooklyn Methodist Hospital has become fully integrated into Weill Cornell, and New York Presbyterian Queens is very much aligned with the cancer mission as well. So, as a lifelong New Yorker, recognizing that there are somewhere north of 5 million people who live on the other side of the East River, who, for reasons perhaps of their own choice or, social circumstances that prevent them from being able to commute into Manhattan to get high quality cancer care, I recognized the laudable nature of that mission to bring very high quality cancer care, including access to cutting edge clinical trials, to areas of New York City for which those opportunities are not very easy to see.
Well, also, I guess the main reason to hire you as opposed to a health systems person is to go after an NCI designation. What is your how is that what's happening? Are you going after the NCI designation eventually?
So absolutely, I think that is a clear goal, right? That this is an outstanding both medical organization, research organization, and I think that there has been the quest now for several years to achieve NCI designation. And I think that, to be transparent, the focus on Brooklyn and Queens really does answer to some of the NCI's interest in serving a relatively underserved population of diverse individuals. And, I think that we are aware that there are now 4 outstanding NCI designated cancer centers on the island of Manhattan. And so, certainly from the point of view of the quality of both the research and the cancer care, there's no question that Weill Cornell has what it takes. But, I think that the inclusion of this major part of the New York metropolitan area population does give, I think, more fuel to this NCI designation quest. And I should also say that actually, there are more than one route to NCI designation. I have the great privilege to be part of the external advisory board for the Harvard Cancer Center. And so I have seen how consortium cancer centers, can succeed. And so, depending upon, the wishes of the NCI and the direction in which the Cancer Center program goes, one could imagine that, the Weill Cornell, the Meyer Cancer Center effort could pursue this solo, or could think about forming a consortium. I think, being at the tail end of my first 100 days, in the job, it is way too early for me to know which path we will go down. But suffice to say, I think the most important part of achieving any kind of NCI designation for Weill Cornell is making our presence in Brooklyn and Queens very real, and very effective. And I'm extraordinarily grateful to the prior leadership of the Meyer Cancer Center, the founding director, Lou Cantley, and then the interim director, Max Loda, because, through their leadership, already some of the barriers to tying together Brooklyn Methodist, NYP Queens, and the Upper East Side together into what I am now referring to as one Meyer Cancer Center have begun. And there are clinical trials that are now open at all 3 sites. And with the full asset merger of Brooklyn Methodist, now there's really one IRB that covers both the Weill Cornell campus and Brooklyn Methodist. So we are seeing really the beginning of this coalescence of the one Meyer Cancer Center ethos. New faculty members that we're recruiting, not just in medical oncology, but also in surgical oncology, radiation oncology, are really following a hybrid model where people are not defined by the geographic site at which they work, but rather they are defined by their disease-specific or modality-specific mission, which I think is incredibly important in ensuring that we are delivering one standard of care, no matter where patients choose to receive that care from the Meyer Cancer Center. There's no A team, there's no B team, there's only one team. And this is actually a lesson that I saw quite clearly play out, during the early days of the MSK regional network forming, where there was really a stress being put on the fact that no matter where someone chose to get their care, they were assured that they were getting the highest quality care and every opportunity, no matter which geographic location they chose to receive that care at.
Well, I always think of Weill Cornell as a leukemia place, as a hematologic malignancies place, because MSK was always a powerhouse also of solid tumors. Do you need to, is that still the case? Do you need to build up? What are you building up? Which part?
Right. So it's a great question, Paul, and I think you of course hit that exactly right, that the heme malignancies at Weill Cornell have always been a very strong point. The leukemia and the lymphoma services are pointed at with great pride. I should also say though that the solid tumor services have emerged as representing true excellence, especially in GU malignancies. There is a spore in prostate cancer here. There are homegrown novel therapeutics, including one of the first PSMA-directed antibodies for prostate cancer, and there has been more recently some very strong recruitment to some of the other solid tumor services to build that up. So before I arrived here, Massimo Cristofanilli was recruited to lead the breast cancer service. The breast surgical service, led by Lisa Newman, is a really amazing group of individuals that has spread their wings across the sphere, which is the term for the regional network. In addition to actually some very important outreach to patients in Africa as well. In addition to that, as a melanoma doctor, I think I would have had a little bit more trepidation pursuing this opportunity, because continuing to practice is definitely something that I'm committed to. And I was very fortunate that Dr. Anna Pavlik had moved from NYU Langone to Weill Cornell right in the middle of the pandemic. And so she is someone who very capably and enviably led the melanoma program at NYU for many years, and is a wonderful friend and colleague. So the fact that she was here, established a program in cutaneous oncology, recruited a young faculty member, Dr. Barbara Ma, to work with her. This now makes it much easier for me to fit in as a clinical oncologist, as well as being, the cancer center director.
Mm-hmm. When will you, do you think, decide whether to go after a designation alone or in a consortium? How far are you from, where are you in that decision making?
I mean, I think, I think we're a couple of years from knowing for sure which direction we want to go in. And I think that, seeing how long it is going to take to, make sure that we are meeting all of the expectations that the NCI has, especially in terms of clinical trial accrual in the Brooklyn and Queens sites. Those are absolutely pivotal metrics. And, we are not going to rush toward this. We're going to do this in a deliberate and thoughtful way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's still a while. What's missing right now? How is the population census?
So I think in terms of the faculty or the
Anything.
Right. So we definitely have some recruiting to do in terms of faculty. We have an open position for the head of the bone marrow transplant program here, and we have 2 or 3 actually outstanding candidates for that, and so hopefully we'll see that search conclude in the near future. We have a search ongoing for a leader of our thoracic oncology program. Dr. Bepi Giacone departed for a position in industry around the time that I arrived. I'm assured that I had nothing to do with that, but certainly that's a very important part of the program here. And I think that there is a long history actually in lung cancer research here that deserves to have an additional leader. Dr. Nasser Al-Torki from the thoracic surgery group is an outstanding colleague. Was just awarded a major NIH grant for work looking at the development of early stage non-small cell lung cancer and how one might intercept that with targeted vaccines using an mRNA platform. And I think that this focus on early stage lung cancer, especially in a broad population where screening has always been on the high priority list here, with low dose CT scans and outreach to the community. This is a real opportunity to advance that further.
Well, thinking of catchment area for a moment again, so you're adding Brooklyn and Queens. Queens is, I guess, both. Brooklyn is contested, I think, right? There are lots of other cancer centers there. Queens is contested by all of the usual suspects in New York plus Northwell.
Of course.
Which is it's fascinating how that's all working out. What is that catchment area? What does it look like to you sitting at and looking at what you do?
Yeah, so I don't think that there is any lack of patients who are looking to New York Presbyterian Queens as their go-to location for cancer care. I mean, I've made several visits to that site, both before and after my appointment, and the place is very crowded. There are plenty of patients there. We're now thinking about how we might expand that. To allow for even more patients to be treated there. So there is no lack of demand. It's obviously, I've learned a lot about the community there. That particular neighborhood in Queens is one of the most diverse locations on the planet Earth, believe it or not.
Right.
There are 130 languages spoken, in the catchment area for NYP Queens. They have had some very impressive recruitment to especially breast cancer trials there. So I think that there is a real opportunity, to expand, our offerings there. In Brooklyn, New York Presbyterian, in the middle of the pandemic, opened the Center for Community Health, which is a state-of-the-art outpatient facility, which includes 2 floors for cancer care, including dedicated space for clinical trials, with Weill Cornell clinical trials team members positioned there. And I think that, obviously Brooklyn, has a bit more competition. There are other fine hospitals nearby. I think that the quality of the team that's being assembled at Brooklyn Methodist is really outstanding. I've, just in the couple of months that I've been associated with the recruiting efforts there, some of the especially young faculty members that I have seen come from very prestigious fellowship programs or from instructor appointments at some of the best cancer training and practice institutions in the country, have their eye on our presence in Brooklyn and Queens because of the opportunity to serve that population there. Queens is a very is very heavily Asian influenced. Obviously, Flushing is very dominantly populated by Mandarin-speaking Chinese, as well as other South Asian immigrants. Brooklyn is very populated in that area with the Caribbean American and Black communities, as well as a nearby Asian community, the Hasidic community from Crown Heights, as well as the Arabic-speaking community in Bay Ridge, and the Russian-speaking community in Brighton Beach. So, there is a real, a real rainbow of different nationalities represented there. And I think the disease presentations, are very different than one might expect, say in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. So with the Caribbean and the Black communities in Brooklyn, obviously the Hem/Onc physicians there not only take care of cancers, but also benign hematologic conditions such as sickle cell. So making sure that we have a team that's available to do that. The Caribbean roots of many of the community members make T-cell leukemias, HTLV-1 related leukemias, more prevalent there. And so having expertise in that disease is important. And then also recognizing some of the demographics of that area where, obesity is a challenge. And with the connection between obesity and especially some of the more hormonally related malignancies, this is a very important opportunity that we have to address disparities in gynecologic malignancies, and again with the African American population, the triple negative breast cancer patients there as well. So I think that there are a variety of different needs that we are being called to serve. It's a privilege to do so. I'll just point out actually one very unique opportunity that's been pursued by my colleague, Dr. David Nannis from the GU group, who's interested in raising awareness around prostate cancer screening. And he has a federal grant for a program where conversations about prostate cancer screening are going to occur in neighborhood barbershops. Really bringing the cancer dialogue into people's comfort zone. And I think that's a very important opportunity to take advantage of.
Ah, fascinating. What about disparities research that you might be able to do? How does that work? Because that seems to be the key to getting designation.
Absolutely. And I think that, that is a real magnet for some faculty positions within our population health group. And I'm very fortunate to have Dr. Rula Tamimi as, one of the associate directors for the Meyer Cancer Center, who is really laser focused on this. And, of course, the disparities in care availability and screening are an extraordinarily important focus for us. We have several different people who are currently being recruited to study this and to help us develop unique interventions. In addition, I think that there's also the opportunity presented in terms of the research substrate within these communities. So as you probably know, much of what we think we know about cancer is ascertained from studying people and specimens who look like you and me. Mm-hmm. So I think that being able to gain knowledge around the connection between people's ethnicity as reflected in their germline genome as well as their tumor genome, in addition to the particular aspects of their culture that play into the potential outcomes from cancer, are very important considerations. And how that all fits together is a very major goal for us. So my former boss and now colleague, Harold Varmus, actually has been a major proponent of a project called Polyethnic 1000, which is being led by the New York Genome Center, and Weill Cornell Medicine is an important part of that, to really study the importance of the genome in reflecting, people's ethnicity, and how that plays into both the diagnosis and outcome of cancer.
Oh, fascinating! And that this is part of the research that you would be conducting now. Is that?
Yes, that's exactly right. So making sure that we have smooth pipelines for offering patients the opportunity to share blood, tumor specimens, their medical history with researchers here, as part of the Meyer Cancer Center, it's critical to our success.
There were times when NCI would say, no, you can't have X number of cancer centers in Boston. No, you can't have an X number of cancer centers in Seattle. They don't seem to be saying that about New York right now. I'm not hearing that at all. Are you?
So I have not had any formal conversations with the NCI leadership about this yet. So all I can share with you are the communications that came through during the prior 10 years, really which emphasized the fact that the future of the Meyer Cancer Center, in terms of NCI designation, was really dependent upon how effective our presence in Brooklyn and Queens can be. Because if you think about the number of lives, there, as opposed to the Upper East Side of Manhattan, it's staggering. And so, I think that of course geography is important. And when one looks at the map of where comprehensive cancer centers currently are, there are pockets where there is a more concentrated number of these centers, around big cities where academic medical centers are, and there are other parts of the country where there is an obvious geographic need. But I think that the geography, is part of the consideration, and I think clearly with the emphasis on Brooklyn and Queens, the population density is also part of this.
Yeah, you're talking about this would be number 6 in the New York City area, with more going, right? Am I?
There are currently 4. This would be the 5th.
Let's go through the numbers. Wouldn't you count Montefiore as
So I was talking about Manhattan, right?
Manhattan alone? Yes,
yes,
Manhattan alone is 4.
Yes.
Kind of the
Yes,
New York City area,
Yes.
5. So you would be 6.
Yes. So if one includes the Bronx as well, then it's 6. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. No, that's a large number, and it's fascinating that really the whole battle will be fought in Queens and Brooklyn.
Well, I think it's I don't feel a fight coming. I think that the truth is that there are very, very many people there who need high quality cancer care. And the truth is that, many hospitals during the past 20 years closed, especially in Queens. So I think that, I don't think that there is going to be a fierce competition for patients. I think that what we need to do is help each other to up our individual efforts, and to serve these people well wherever they choose to be treated.
Right. I certainly didn't mean to suggest that there would be a fight coming. It's like your battle for designation would be won or lost in that catchment area.
No, for sure. I mean, the messaging to the prior leaders of the Meyer Cancer Center was that it's Brooklyn and Queens that are going to push you across the finish line.
What's the time frame?
I would say we're about 2 or 3 years from knowing whether this is going to be a solo endeavor or whether we embark upon this in a consortium mindset. I think the way that things have been going in terms of increasing clinical trial accruals, the merger with Brooklyn Methodist, the construction of the outpatient facility, I think that's a reasonable time frame for us to make this happen.
So you think before the first application goes in, how many years? What you think? 5 years?
I think I would certainly want to have submitted something before 5 years.
That sounds great. What about immuno-oncology? Because that is your area, and I would think you could build a powerhouse around that.
So thankfully, from the basic science point of view, we are still part of the same, immunology graduate school program as I was used to, because the Weill Cornell graduate school includes both my colleagues at MSK as well as the folks here. So there is abundant talent in terms of basic immunology. I think that, we have made some very important recruitments recently in the area of immuno-oncology. And, I mentioned Nasser Al-Turki and the efforts around cancer vaccination and lung cancer. Certainly, the team in GU has made important efforts. And I think that, the next frontier for immuno-oncology is obviously cell therapy. Right, so we've seen the beginnings of this with the commercial availability of CAR T cells for leukemias and lymphomas, and certainly those are being offered as a standard treatment option, here for patients who have the respective malignancies. But I think, what I'm really looking forward to is the development of a broader cell therapy program, including CAR T cells for solid tumors, including TCR transgenics, including ex vivo expanded tumor infiltrating lymphocytes for solid tumors. My colleague Dr. Pavlik was involved in some of the clinical trials of TIL for melanoma during her time at NYU, and we're in the process of opening some of those trials here. And, I'm very fortunate that the laboratory group that I'm still associated with is now very focused on developing new CAR T cells for melanoma and for some kinds of lung cancer and sarcoma. So I think that we really see the opportunity there. And we've managed to have a few of the folks in my lab who were working on that move across here to Weill Cornell. And I think as we think about, again, we've got at least 3 candidates for the BMT service, and thinking about those people and what their visions are in terms of including cell therapy along with BMT. That's a very important consideration.
Do you think you have the dollary to get this done?
So yes, for sure. The recruitment process that we followed between Steve Corwin, the CEO of New York Presbyterian, at the time Augustine Choi, the dean of Weill Cornell Medical College, now Francis Lee is the interim dean. They really provided me with a very generous startup to get this done. I have their full-throated support for NCI designation through the best possible route, which we will determine together. And importantly, I think that they have really assembled a tremendous degree of enthusiasm among the faculty in the medical school, as well as the various hospitals, for the success of the Meyer Cancer Center. My offer letter says that I serve at the pleasure of the dean and the CEO, and I really have no question that their support is providing a strong wind at my back. And I have to also mention that one very important part of my own personal success here is the fact that when I was recruited, Dean Choi and Dr. Corwin also recruited my long-term laboratory partner and friend and colleague, Dr. Taha Murgu, who has been working with me for 15 years, since we both, were raised from pups in Alan Houghton's lab at MSK. Taha is really showing, amazing promise as the deputy director of the Cancer Center. That's a very important optic, for us, that, we have a cancer center director who is a practicing clinician, but also a translational scientist. And we have a deputy director who is a basic scientist / translational laboratory scientist. So the full spectrum of cancer care and research is covered by the new leadership team. And I couldn't be more grateful for that opportunity.
Well, is there anything we forgot to cover? Anything I didn't?
I think that's the really big message. I appreciate you sharing all the time with me.
No, thank you so much. It's just going to be fascinating for people to understand and read.